Háblame, dime por qué sucedieron esas cosas. Háblame.
So we were talking about sort of artists in New York City who are kind of off the grid, who aren't so visible. And that's because the work they do is either very political or it doesn't fit into the normal art world or the museums. So in 1989, a group of us got together and we discussed doing something about the anniversary of Columbus coming to America. So that was it would be 1992, 500 years. And of course, there were going to be a lot of celebrations, but a lot of us said, wait a minute, no, this guy did a lot of trouble, caused a lot of trouble for a lot of people. How do we create a different kind of memory? So history or histories or memory as resistance. So a group of us, about this many, maybe about 5 more people, got together and we thought and we read and we were like, okay, what could we do? So we had one great idea, which was, okay, could we create like monuments, but counter monuments, but we make them out of plastic and we go and we leave them in the street and we run away. That was too complicated. And then we thought, the plaques in the street like this. We thought, okay, let's do a very different version. And when no one's looking, that was also probably too expensive and too complicated. So we finally came up with a very simple idea. We would make signs, like traffic signs, and we'd put them up on the street. And because New York City is so visually busy, most of them nobody's going to see, people won't notice, and we'll tell people, go look for this, go look for that. But then a new person came to the group. He said, oh, wait a minute, I think we could get permits for just 1 year to put it up. Just 1 year, but we can get permits. So we worked very hard and we talked to officials, we talked to a neighbor, and we managed to get the permit. This was the first, it was under Mayor David Dinkins. He was the first only African-American, very open to possibilities. So from 1989 to 92, we worked very hard. And just for example, we wanted to think, how could we talk about a different many histories that happen in New York City? So this person, Stuart Davis, does anybody know him? He was a famous artist from the 1920s and 30s. He lived in this building on 13th Street off of Union. And the people in the building decided to put a plaque up to say, famous guy lived here. It says, famous American artist, he was influenced by jazz. But what it doesn't say he was a member of the American Communist Party. Okay, he was actually an important art theorist for the Communist Party USA. But none of that's on here. Somebody has to tell these others. So we took our name from this movie, Repo Man, great film. So in the United States, if you buy a computer, you can't pay for it all at once, you pay for it every month. But if you can't make the payment, the repo man comes and he takes your computer, your car, he'll take your furniture. So they're a little bit like, they're like lumping themselves, also going after other working class and lumping people. So we thought we should be the repo men and the repo women, but we should steal back the other histories that nobody's saying and put them in the street. And that's what we did. So we got these permits. We actually got permission. We put the signs up ourselves. This sign was for 1 year in 1992. It was at Wall Street. All of the signs had a front and a back, and the back had text. And this tells the story that this is where the slave market was in New York City. No one had ever marked that sign before, so we marked it for 1 year. Only in the last 2 years, under the mayor, our new mayor, de Blasio, they put up a permanent marker, finally. Yeah.
They put a permanent.
They did put one, not us, but someone in the city. And they were saying, nobody's ever marked the site before. And I said, I wrote letters and everything. I said, wait a minute, we did this in 1992. Even these histories are forgotten. This sign was put up by an Italian-American woman, and her grandmother came to Ellis Island. She wasn't considered fit. She wasn't considered healthy or mentally stable. She stayed in Ellis Island and died there. And then they buried her in a pauper's grave, just no name, no marker.
How long did this stay there?
We had 1 year. 1992 to 1993. And so we put this right near the ferry that takes people to Ellis Island. Tourist ferry. This is the first woman who became a firefighter in New York City. She had a very hard time. The men treated her very badly, but she stayed strong. Finally being recognized has been only in the last year people have been interviewing her. I'm going to ask you a question now. I'll do this and then we'll stop a second. This says advantages of an unregulated free market economy. So my question to you is, we put these up in 1992, downtown Manhattan. Where do you think we put this sign? You get to guess. Anybody? If you were going to put this sign, where would you put it?
Wall Street. Wall Street.
It's all Stock Exchange. We put it outside the Stock Exchange. Oh, I had another side. Sorry. So we put it outside the Stock Exchange, and the people at the Stock Exchange were having their 200th anniversary. They called up the city. They gave us the permit, and they said, "You got to take that sign down." And the Department of Transportation, who gave us the permit, said no. But this sign talks about the beginnings of neoliberalization, really. And in 1929, when the stock market crashed.
Y en 1929, cuando el mercado de acciones como se fue.
Supposedly, people jumped out of windows because they lost everything.
¿Cómo decidían los temas
It was a small group like this, and once we knew what we were going to do, we had a name, we knew we were going to use downtown Manhattan only, Chambers as sort of a restricted area. We put out the word, and we invited anybody that wanted to work with us. We also researched, and we came up with a big packet of flyers that we gave out with all kinds of possibilities, and a few books that we found about alternative histories. And we had the Municipal Art Society, which is helping us a little bit. Other alternative historians were willing to help. So if you came and said, "I want to do this project," great, here's some possibilities, or you do your own research, come back to us, and then we look at everything. But we were not curators. We didn't say no to anybody. We had little committees, small committees. So one worked on how is it written, one worked on the visuals, and is it clear, can we suggest something different? And other people worked on the production of the work. All of these were actually, if you're interested, these are all silk-screened on aluminum panels. And this is 1992, so we made extras, but we put one up, and only, I think, 2 or 3 got damaged by trucks, so we had to replace them. But nobody took them down. Nobody graffitied. For example, in 1990, Nelson Mandela was released from prison in South Africa. He came to New York, and there was a huge parade. So someone marked that. That was one of the signs. There was a very famous abortionist named Madame Ristel, and she became very wealthy before abortion was illegal. Abortion.
Wait, abortion or abolition?
Abortion and abortificans and all kinds of birth control.
Oh yeah, the girl putting this up.
In 1900s, yeah. Another one, yeah.
Oh, another one.
1900s, yeah. Right where the World Trade Center is, she had a mansion there. Yeah. And then she was, later, there was a guy who hounded her to death, put her in prison.
Wait, what?
And she cut her throat. Or cut her wrists.
herself?
Yeah, she killed herself. We had where Native Americans lived. But in 1998, 7 years later, we did another project. This time we had a lot of trouble. Mayor Dinkins, this black progressive mayor, was gone. And now we have Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. He was law and order, blah, blah, blah. And we submitted the same idea and then they said no permits. So we actually we tried to sue the city. We actually got a law firm. And the lawyers, our lawyers, discussed with the city, and finally the city said, okay, but not after this, this is it. This might be one of the projects they didn't like. This is by two artists, Jenny Pollock. Jenny is Dred Scott's wife. And so they were talking about, now this is 1998, talking about all the young men of color who the police killed. And it says that all these people were killed, 75 people, and different ways they were killed. Shot in back, shot in head, pinned down and shot, choked, hog-tied, and crushed and beaten to death. Only 3 officers, were convicted of committing any crime, and 0 for murder. So Giuliani probably didn't like this. So we had problems. But, 1792 to 1992, that was the anniversary flag. I'm just going to jump ahead. Okay, because I made this pretty compressed. We finally got the sign project up. Oh, because Olga has seen this so many times, and we had press on the show. In 1994, we also did a project about gay and lesbian and queer people. This time, all the signs were in this pink triangle that the Nazis put on gay people. This sign is about this person who was a transgender activist, Marcia Johnson, and Marcia Johnson was found dead in the Hudson River right near here. This is the meatpacking area. So when this project went up in 1994, it was still meatpacking, and transgendered people and prostitutes worked along here. And a lot of times when young people would run away because they were transgender, they would go here and live on the street. So Marcia Johnson was part of a group that tried to help those kids and work with them. When she was found dead, other transgender activists and people went to the police and they said, what happened? And the police said she committed suicide. And they said, that's not possible. I think a movie has just come out about her life. Now here's the interesting thing. We only had a permit for 1 year, again, which means that we had to go and take the signs down. So sometime in 1995, when our group went to take the sign down, other transgender people came up and said, no, this is our sign, this is our monument. And so they walked and they left it there. Now, if you go to this neighborhood, it's very expensive shops, very expensive restaurants and art galleries, and all that transgender, everything's gone. So somewhere over the years, the sign disappeared, we don't know. So we had trouble, again in 1998, as I said. This is Marina Gutierrez, and she did a piece about racism in the housing courts. And even though we had a permit, someone took the sign down. So we put another sign up, they took it down. Put it up, and we had to then go as a big group and say, wait a minute, this is not right. And all of the signs I know had disappeared, but about 5 years ago, one of my former students was walking in Brooklyn, found a sign that I didn't even know was still there. And this sign was one of those about the police violence. And the man who lived in this building, his son was shot by the police. So he's made sure that sign stays up, even though the permit technically is supposed to be gone. So there's a lot of interesting sign projects around the world. This one's from Argentina, and it's about the dirty wars and about the generals. This one was not inspired by our project necessarily, but this one was. And this is in Southern California. And this woman calls herself Poco Society, and she goes around and does what we didn't do the first time. She actually puts new plaques up around San Diego. So she talks about the Chicano and Mexican, history of that area. And this is very interesting too. So this is Oakland, California, and Oakland, California is where the Black Panthers started in the 1960s. And there was a white community and a black community like this. And the children in the black community had to cross a very busy street to go to school. So the black community kept asking the city, please put a traffic light, please put a traffic light. And the city council was all white and they didn't care. So one day the Black Panthers, dressed in Black Panther uniforms with guns, walked into the street and they stopped the traffic and they let the children go. And then the white city council said, of course we'll put a traffic, please just don't do that again. So this traffic light from 1969 or so is the traffic light that Black Panthers got installed. And a couple of artists in year 2000 marked this with their own history sign. Much like what we did in New York, they did it. And there's other examples, but what I want to just talk about for a few minutes, if we can, and this comes back to what I spoke about last night. Where does all this belong in our history? Because you can't find it there. So you weren't here, but last night I talked about other activist work that we did in New York in the 1980s. So 1980s, the 1990s, but none of this is being recorded by art history. So this is one of the questions that I sort of started to think about and research, and I started to think it's like there is a black market economy where many artists operate underground, and a small group of artists are very successful. But the successful artists they depend on these people underground. So this shows actual dark economies in Peru. According to this, 60% of the Peruvian economy is informal, and 40% is official. So this same kind of question for me was, how many artists are actually working in
Y
the
entonces él se
informal
preguntó la misma pregunta.
But another way to look at it is what's called the long foot. So if you think there are many artists working at any given time, and a few artists are very, very visible and everybody sees them, they're very successful. But they are only there because everyone is here. And the question is, once we have the possibility of the internet and other things that communicate, all of this, which was very dark and hard to see, becomes much more visible. So this was my thesis called Dark Matter, which was to say that like cosmic dark matter, most of the universe is actually made of a material that nobody knows what it is. But it's the gravity of that material that keeps the universe like this. So exactly the same question in culture. Maybe the majority of artists in culture keep it together, but we don't know what they are because we don't see them. Except now we do see them because suddenly it's becoming much more visible, all of it. So dark matter, it's not over there, it's not over there, it's all through the official space, much like this.